Good evening, Warriors! Back with another episode of Vigor Warriors 2 and the 1% Club. How are we doing this evening, my Warrior friends? This is a great day. Snow on the ground. It's about almost like 10:30 at night, and I love it. It's a little too warm still. We're about 30 degrees, I think, out here, but we're getting colder. The temperatures are dropping, and this is the kind of weather that you know that I like. Excellent weather. If I had my choice, instead of living in near any kind of city, I'd be out there in the wilds. Maybe that will come one day as I get a little bit younger. As I say younger, we're gonna start aging back the other way. You know, we were at 61 now. We're going back to 60 and 59, and we'll continue to get younger by the day. All right, my friends. So thank you guys for the comments. Thank you guys for all the subscriptions, the likes, the donations. I appreciate it a great deal. I feel very blessed, guys, that you guys are really kind of having fun with this a little bit, but also being very serious about it as well. And I think it's a combination of both things. You know, we can have a little fun. I can scream a little bit back and forth here, but I think the thing is that we really want to be serious about this idea that we need to gain more control of ourselves. We need to be the masculine male that people really expect, even though you may see society telling us otherwise. It's important to be that person who is that leader. It's important to be that person who's a provider and a protector. And males have a lot of potential in those areas. Not that females can't do that, but a lot of females are looking to males to do that. This is why we talk about this energy thing all the time. And we see so many comments you guys are making about the same way. That women sense the energy, they love the energy, they want to be around that energy. And so basically they respect you and they see that. It doesn't matter if it's your girlfriend, your wife, a lot of other women. I mean, we see this in texts all the time, that people are sending me and messages and emails and things like that of all these experiences they have with just a little bit of retention. We talk about this, and it's not like, because it took me 47 years. It's not like all of a sudden, you're gonna kind of go cold turkey. I mean, no matter what kind of addiction you have, you can't. It's very difficult to go cold turkey. It's very difficult to quit smoking right away. After all the years you smoke, if you smoke, it's hard not to give up all good foods. If you had bad foods, it's hard to give those up. Gambling's the same thing. Sex is the same thing. It's all the same sort in the mind. It's an addiction that you have as you go through, and it's hard to give that up. So it takes time, and I understand that it took 47 years, so I understand that it takes time to get to the point where you're now ready to say that enough of this, it's time to move on to something else. And I think this is the same thing we're talking about here, that you have to take it one day at a time. And that's why I always say to continue to battle on, my battle on cry, that we continue every day to battle this on and take one step further. And in my mind, getting close to God. I'm doing this for the primary reason of getting closer to God, and that's where I see myself as we go through. Now, as we do this, one of the things I want to talk about is this idea that Herb Street talked about, and I think it's Herb Street 888, talked about the idea that we're talking about, that he's asking about marriage and semen retention. And so I've been married almost 30 years, and we're going to talk about this a little bit. And I'll kind of give you my perspective on this as we go through a little bit as well. All right, so we talk about the idea of relationships. Obviously, marriage is an important one. In the Bible, it talks about marriage. It talks about marriage in different types of texts, religious texts you talk about. And the marriage really is an important union of people together. And obviously, to be able to have children, and that can take care of the children and grow and have those children have children, and they continue to grow in family members and things like that. And this is how generations prosper, and you see this in the Bible. You see this in a lot of other religious types of texts that you see. So the idea of marriage is very important. Now, if you look at the New Testament, Paul and other people just talking about the idea that it is important. Moses also kind of, I think, mentioned this as well. I could be correct, but I thought he mentioned as well in the Bible, talking about the fact that if you cannot have, if you have too much lust and you can't control that, which a lot of people do, this is why we have the problem with not having retention and pornography and all this other kind of stuff, then you should get married. Have one person to do this with instead of multiple people, which doesn't really serve any kind of purpose. But our nature as human beings is not to do that. And this is where the devil plays a big factor. The evil one knows that. And so this is why they play into our temptation with things like marketing and all these other kind of stuff that sells sex and sells all these type of things that you can see and you can picture the image of that. And so men crave that and they thirst for that type of stuff, and this becomes really a real exercise more in kind of releasing energy than in anything else. For what purpose? That's the great question. If you're not doing to procreate, what are you doing this for? So as we talk about marriage, this is why it's important, as a good question by Herb Street talks about here, is the fact that marriage is a unique type of situation. And because marriage is a unique type of situation, you have to kind of think about it in terms of, okay, how do I deal with celibacy, the idea of all this, because you want to continue to save your energy. So it's a question, a really good question. And I think we've addressed this before, but let's kind of talk about it a little bit more detail since we have a couple minutes on this one. So when we talk about marriage, we talk about the idea that obviously if you want to have a child, you're going to procreate. And I happen to be blessed with 3 children that God has given us. And so we, obviously I was releasing a lot of those. I mean, that had to be, right, to be able to have children. And so there was a number of periods of time for a lot of years that we did that. And that was a key case to be able to have children. And that's a normal type of thing that couples have. And so from that point on then, the idea was that, okay, how often do you do that? Now remember, the male role is to give. We are giving to the female, right? Females give to males, but in this case, what males are giving is giving them energy. Because when you look at a male and female, females have a lot more estrogen during the month than men do, and men have a lot more testosterone. And because of the situation that women go through every month, they lose energy. And because of that, men give them energy. And so they need men. And I think many of you kind of talked about this in your messages. They need that energy. And so when we talk about marriage, you have a lot of choices you can make with that person. Now, once again, you're making that choice. I'm not going to recommend anything, when it comes to what are things you should do. I think it's very important to understand, and I think we've had people in the past and talking about this as well, is that, you have to think about releasing when you feel like you want to release. And obviously, if you have a wife, if you have somebody who is, with you, that's a situation where you're making that decision. And whether you're old enough and too old to have any more children, you want to have any more children, you're still with that person. I much rather have a situation like that in my mind, that you're with a person, you're releasing with that person, and then doing that instead of doing pictures and photographs. And you can do that. Now, some people can actually go ahead and not release and still do that. And that's another one of those options you can go through as well. It leads a lot more self-control to be able to do that. And again, as we talked about that, that's kind of on that borderline of edging and those type of things, and whether or not that's something that is something that's an actual release or not. But the key, my friends, is going to go back to this whole thing about actual energy that you release. Now, I am the one that really is talking about the fact that the dangerous part is with the pictures and all the other stuff that we talk about. Having one person that you're married to and having a loving relationship with that person is important. Now, the other thing is, my friends, that as time goes on, relationships, my experience also is the fact that intimacy has a lot of different types of avenues to this. And that intimacy is a lot more than just having sex. And so your intimacy with your wife, your husband, those type of things become really important. That doesn't necessarily mean that you're releasing energy. You're at the point where you're actually having sex all the time. There's a lot of other types of things going on there too to build a marriage. And so you have a lot of different things that are happening. But I go back to this whole premise, this idea that people think that you have to be having sex all the time to be a happy person. And I guess that's the thing I'm pushing back with a lot as a warrior, saying that's not the case. And I'm not saying there's something wrong with that type of behavior, but I'm saying you don't need to have that to live. Because in fact, that's one of the least things you need to live, especially because what the idea is to basically go ahead and procreate. And so this is what you're trying to do, is have a child. And this is the key thing you're looking at. So marriage is a very interesting type of one. I appreciate the comment from Herb Street. I think it's important to kind of look at this if you are getting married or married and kind of decide how you want to approach that with your partner. I think it's important to realize that you have to keep your energy, but you also have to realize you're in a relationship where you're going to grow with a person, and that person's going to give you energy, no matter if it's male or female, in different ways emotionally as well, and that's an important part of what we talk about. So, all right, my friends, well, thank you, Herb Street, for a nice comment on this, and I think it's a great topic to look at, and we'll talk about this a little further as we go along. All right, my friends, have a good evening, and remember 2 things. 1, every day is a new day to a great warrior, and 2, don't forget, my friends, to battle